Hello, everyone. I know everyone is curious about Node.js. It's one of the hottest topics today. We have a lot of people on this webinar. Inga Vakulenko is a CloudLinux OS product manager, and she will be talking today about Node.js Selector and how you can use it with CloudLinux OS today. Inga, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Igor, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And today we're going to talk about Node.js hosting and how to roll it out. And I'm not sure if you're following or not, but CloudLinux has released this new feature for cPanel is now in production. And just recently, a week ago, we released it for direct admin control panel, and it's in beta. So firstly, I would like to cover why have we decided to do that. And there's three reasons I'd like to highlight. First is hosting Node.js app does not add any additional costs to you. So you don't have to purchase any licenses, don't pay extra, we just ship it with LV Manager. So LV Manager starting with version 4 and higher, they all support and ship Node.js settings. It's super easy to deploy and use, and this is something I'll be covering this webinar. And obviously the reason why is because of popularity of JavaScript language, and it still remains one of the fastest growing programming language in the world. It's used by over 80% of developers and by like 95% of all websites for any dynamic logic and web pages. Just think of anything like Facebook.com, Google.com, like mostly like every website, they're using JavaScript for front end. And we have some charts to show that. So in comparison to other programming languages, JavaScript is by far more popular on GitHub. It overcomes Python by almost 1.5 million. And on Stack Overflow, it remains the most popular language to 71.5% of people using it. And beside that, according to the data gathered by Indeed.com, it remains of most like top 3, one of the most popular languages for job posting, and also most sought after languages from the employee's point of view. And taking into account all of this data, it's quite likely that JavaScript is going to fade in the near future, and it still remains one of the best choices when it's going to the development of interactive web pages. And this is something where you want to be sure that it's supported by all the main browsers. But also, one of the most important reason, another reason that JavaScript has come a really long way from a tool that can bring some interactivity to your web page to a decent choice for efficient server-wide development. And here we want to talk about Node.js, which is an open source environment that allows JavaScript code to be run on server sites, which is allowing web developers to use basically just one language for the entire web application. And Node.js is the most commonly used tool on Stack, according to Stack Overflow, 49.9%. And I hope you all got excited about that if you were not yet. And so how do we start using Node.js? And here is where CloudLinux has something to offer. So how to start using Node.js? Now with Node.js settings is really simple. So basically you have just to run 2 commands in your command line. First is to install our alt Node.js packages. We support Node.js version 6, 8, and 9 in production. And today we added version 10 in beta. So you basically run this command to get our alt Node.js packages. And then you run the second command that brings you, if you're not CloudLinux user yet, brings you LV Manager and other packages that have dependencies. And you can also install CanGFS, which brings some security, but it is not a mandatory. It will work without CanGFS too. And that's basically it. It's just that simple. So after you've done that, in your on your server, you will have CloudLinux LV Manager with Node.js settings. And now I have some slides, but it's a bit boring to look at slides, I think. So I've prepared a demonstrational server to show you it live, how it looks, and let's go and check it. I've got cPanel WHM server with production version of Node.js settings that are in LV Manager. Where you can find them, you should go to Options tab, which now has a foldable design, and you can find Node.js here at the bottom. We ship it disabled, but I have it enabled because I have to prepare to add some versions, add some apps in order to show you how it works. So what you have here, here you have a list of Node.js versions installed, path to it, the quantity of applications. You can obviously enable, disable Node.js settings. But once you enable it and you have your Node.js versions installed, you can enable or disable each version. You can, by clicking this button, make it default version or delete it if you no longer want to use it, or if your users don't want to use it, or for whatever reason. And to demonstrate to you how it works, so basically when you like you can see here that this version has 3 different apps using this version, and here you have a bit more information as app root directory, and also another action is to move this application to another version or change Node.js version for this application. What happens if you disable Node.js version? So basically, the application that are already using this version, they will still run using this version, but user will not be able to create a new application with version 6. And to demonstrate you that, let's log in as user. I'm user 5 today. And now you will see a little bit of a user interface. And if I try now to create an application using version 6, I simply won't have it. Yep. And then you can enable that again. But once again, the application that are already running on version 6, they will still be running on version 6. And that's pretty much all settings for administrator with server. So it's really simple. It doesn't really add any pain, any extra management to you. And now let's see how it works for users, for developers. So once you logged in as a user, you have a list of your applications here, which provides the following information. It's app URI, app root directory, modes. It has 2 modes, development and production, and I will cover that later. It has status, where the application is started or stopped, and it provides you actions. For started application, you can either stop it. This is something I've done now. You can restart the app, you can edit it or delete. For applications that are stopped, you can start it, edit, and delete the application. So let's create a new application now. Let's say I'm going to use version 8. Let's update this page because I disabled version 6 and then I brought it back. So now I should have it available. Yeah, you see it's back. Let's say I want to create an application. So what you do, you provide application root, test 77, whatever. You obviously will have a real name with real URL. And basically that's it. Now you can press create and we will automatically create application startup file, app.js. Let's see how it works. Yep, it's here. And to show you the further settings that a user has, I'll probably now show you how to deploy it using IDE. I'm going to use WebStorm. So let's do that. Let's create a new project. I'll keep the same name just to keep things simple to not get myself confused. What you do next is you go to WebStorm settings and preferences, and now you have to set up deployment settings. It's here. Add a name for your server and choose SFTP connection because you will need SSH anyways. And I recommend you to make it default because then when you'll be uploading files, you can set automatic uploads. It will automatically upload to your default server, so saves time in a way. And here you have to provide your SFTP host. It's mine. Username, I am user5, and pass. Just press save password, and strangely show that my SFTP is invalid. Okay, apologies for that. I'll explain. There's probably something to do with my VPN. Another thing that you need to do is to add mappings, and it will be home, your username, and 77, and that should work. But just to follow with the demonstration, because for some reason my SFTP connection doesn't work, I will use one of the apps I've created while I was preparing for this demonstration. Let's use this one. Yeah, I will open the application I've created before. Is this one. I'll go to edit menu. And what it does, so what we do is we automatically detect configuration file, which is package.json. If you have it uploaded to your web server, we'll automatically detect it. And here from this menu, you can edit it if you need it. And also here you can run npm install and it will install it. Yep, successful. And then all the scripts that you provided in your package.json, you can run by pressing this button, Run JS Scripts. Just to show you what scripts I have, they're all simple. They basically just print this line. And let's say test3 and run this script. So you can see it's running. And here comes std out. And it prints this line, echo error not as specified. And also you can add here your environmental variables. There will be global variables, apologies, for your application. So I have here something that says that x is equal, its value is 1000, and let's say that y is equal to. Press save. And to show you my code, it prints some information as hello Node.js server. But if we go now to check what it shows, you obviously will have a real URL and a real app running that will do whatever you want it to do, whether it's web magazine or web shop. .com, which one I'm using, test 11. Yeah, so it's basically prints here, and here it provides you global variables. It says X is 1000 and Y is 2. And whatever you would like to change in your code, you can go to WebStorm and say, hello world. Don't forget to make it useful. Just go to Tools, Deployment, Options, and this setting, upload changed files automatically to the default server, is by default set to never. I prefer to set it to always. Then all your changes by pressing Command S, they upload automatically to your server. You can see it here that it's been transferred. And another important detail that you have to do is to restart your application after you uploaded changes. So yeah, let's check now. Yep, it says hello world. And I've promised that I will explain what development and production mode means and when to use them. So in your package.json file, you have dependencies. And these are dependencies for production mode when your application is in production. But when you working on it as a developer, you may have way more dependencies. They will be called dev dependencies with a capital D. And so basically, when your application is in development mode, all dependencies from dev dependencies sections will be picked up and detected. And when you switch to production mode, your dependencies from dependencies will be picked up. Yeah, so it is as simple as it looks. Like your application runs, like basically in 2 clicks, you install it, then in 2 clicks, you deploy it. Just once again, all you have to do is to go to preferences, deployments, provide your IP, username, password, and in mappings, just provide the path on the server to your application, and that's it. Connected. Then you go here, you download it just simply by calling pop-up menu, deployment, and download from test, and you get in all your files here. And once you edited that, don't forget to save it or set up an automatic upload to your server. And once you've added some changes to your application, go here, restart it, and you will see in front that it gives the correct information. What we're gonna do next, so we're gonna concentrate on developers, because using a new feature will probably help you, we hope, will help you to, as an admin, to attract more clients, to offer them more features at no additional cost. And we are gonna make Node.js in CloudLinux so good for the developers that will not have a site or they would not imagine about going anywhere else. Because you've seen how simple it is. Like, I think if I would show it to my granny, she could start using Node.js Selector and hosting Node.js applications. And what we're gonna do next for this feature, as we will be adding integration with remote debugging, and you will be able to do that in your IDE in WebStorm, just as I showed you. We're gonna be adding access to logs from IDE, probably GitHub integration, Lightspeed support, and better WebSocket support, and MongoDB support. And we would really appreciate your suggestion. Like, if you're already using Node.js Selector, or if you're planning on using it, or if you, after this webinar, you decide to use it, just give us feedback. There are plenty of ways to do that. We have feedback at cloudlinux.com, or you can contact marketing, or use our user voice to just give us feedback just to explain what you would like to see, what would be helpful for you as a developer or as an admin to have within this feature. Yeah, and we would definitely consider that. And this was a brief introduction. And if you have any questions, this is a good time. Igor might take them.
Okay, we actually have quite a few questions, so let me go through them, especially those that we already have, that I already answered, and you can see them in question section. Do you have any prevision for support of Node.js 10 and 10.1? So we pushed 10.1 into beta, I think either today or yesterday. It should go into production next week. We've done a lot of testing with Node.js and it looks great for Apache. But what about support for Lightspeed? From our test, it is still not working with Lightspeed, and based on feedback from the forum, they're still working on integration. That is correct. We're working with Lightspeed to make sure it works with Lightspeed, but we cannot do it ourselves. It's a Lightspeed code that needs to be changed, and they are working on that. Does Node.js Selector works in LV with KGFS? Yes, of course.
Sorry, Igor, just to add to that, it works inside KGFS. Yes, it does. But once again, if you're not using KGFS, it's not a mandatory. If you don't have KGFS installed, it will work in real file system.
Thank you. To deploy this in multi-tenant environment, the passenger enterprise passenger max instances setting is needed to limit the number of instances. It is required yet not available in the open source version to deploy this in a sane manner in a multi-tenancy. Well, so our hope is that our CPU memory and entry processes limits already provide what you need, but I will investigate what this option does and see if it actually required. If it is required, we might be able to add something similar. But we do know quite a few companies that are already doing Node.js hosting with success. Node.js applications require 24/7 process for each application. Is that right? If so, are there concerns in regards to server load with deploying this in shared hosting servers with many customers? So yes, it does require a Node.js running. It's not so resource intensive, but of course, if you will have hundreds of those customers each running Node.js, it will take up more RAM that you can expect with, for example, some PHP sites that don't need it. First of all, you can enable it only for some of your customers, not for all of your customers, and charge more from them. You can buy more RAM. RAM is extremely cheap these days. I don't perceive it as a huge issue today, given the cost of RAM and given that we want more customers, not less customers. But maybe. Using Node.js on CloudLinux, does it require additional license or is it provided with CloudLinux? So Node.js is part of CloudLinux OS. It doesn't require any additional licenses beyond CloudLinux OS license. Tomcat support, we have no plans for Tomcat support right now. And if you want to know about memory hogs and having issues with memory, that's Tomcat support. Do you remember a tip to make running temporal tip to run Node.js apps with Lightspeed temporary? Actually, I don't. It's the first time I hear about it. I'm sorry I cannot help you with this one, but probably our support can. To deploy a Node.js application in multi-tenant environment with passenger. To deploy Node.js application in multi-tenant environment, the passenger enterprise passenger max is settings. Setting is needed to limit the number of node instances per LVE. Without passenger max instances, the only limit setting is nproc, which isn't specific to Node.js. Do you have any plans to provide node-specific process control per LVE? We haven't seen the need yet. We can do it once the need arrives, but as of today, we haven't heard anyone asking for it. Well, now we have one request. What about logs? Passenger does not support per vhost logging as I know it. Is this supported that user gets their app logs? That's a really good question. Inga, do you know the answer?
No, not at the moment, but we are considering that. We are providing app logs.
So let's check where the logs are going today. It's something we haven't really checked, and we will follow up on this question.
Yeah, sure.
Does Node.js Selector supports Plesk? So Plesk has their own Node.js Selector. It's not as good as ours, we believe, but because they do, we decided not to do Plesk Node.js Selector for now. We might add it later on once the difference is big enough and Plesk stops copying everything we do. What are the current problems with the WebSockets? So the problem with WebSockets that Apache cannot proxy due to the way Apache works. Actually, Apache can do it for event model, but not everyone is running event model. And to be honest, what we're working on is Nginx proxy in front of Apache. We're working on that anyway. That will allow WebSocket integration, true WebSocket integration, because the way it works today is polling instead of true WebSockets. We wanted to try it on our cPanel development servers, but I can't find a CloudLinux dev license. Do you plan to support that so we can try this awesome feature? Contact our support staff, they will be able to help. Are there any firewall rules we need to think about? No, not at this moment. Everything goes through Apache and Unix sockets, so everything is handled without any additional sockets and ports. CloudLinux team have a roadmap to implement support for MongoDB. Yes, we're starting to think into the future, and we want to add support for MongoDB Redis in the context of Node.js and PHP and Python, because Python selector improvements is one of the other new things that we plan to have a lot of improvements. When you say MongoDB support, do you mean you will be providing a deployable MongoDB for cPanel or simply Node.js support for MongoDB? Well, of course, the deployable MongoDB, Node.js support for MongoDB is available out of the box. It's just an NPM package. I built what I thought was a lightweight Node.js app with WebSockets and one connection. I constantly hit about 1 gigabit gig of memory, which triggers LV limit. Is this normal? To be honest, I don't know. We would like to see this application and why it's hitting so much memory all the time. I don't believe it matches what we see. Inga, can you also record and check what do we see on memory usage when Node.js is running?
Yeah, sure.
How are ports allocated to users' Node.js HTTP processes? Does LV prevents binding to other user ports? So we actually don't bind to ports, we bind to Unix sockets. And this way there is no conflicts, it's all resolved without doing pretty much anything. You mentioned Redis. I know it's off topic, but I use Node.js and Redis together. I would love if we have MySQL governor for Redis queries. Well, we will not have MySQL governor for Redis, but if you think about it, Redis actually takes very little memory. So what we planning to do is that MongoDB and Redis will be installed in individual LVEs so that each customer will have their own installation of Node.js and or Redis. And as a result, there will not be any security issues and everything will be throttled by LVE, so you don't need separate governor for that. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank you for your interest. I hope you will have a chance to try it out. I hope you will launch it for your customers. I believe that the Node.js hosting is already quite a huge, quite popular thing, but it's only gonna grow with all the JavaScript developers becoming first-class citizens in the server environment as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.